Hello, leader. Firing a team member is never easy, even when you know it's the right thing to do for them and your business. Undoubtedly, it's emotional for the person and you. It can also be upsetting for the peers who worked alongside them, trained them, and likely became friends with them. Now, as someone who tunes into this podcast each week, or the clients who I coach, I know that you put a lot of effort into helping this person turn their performance around. You do not take firing someone lightly, including those awful situations where an immediate termination is warranted. So what happens next? How do you create a recovery plan for you, your team, and your clients who may have received services from this person and the overall business itself? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. Both when you need to let a new hire go and when you need to let someone go that's been with you for a while. Welcome to the Stacking Your Team podcast. There's no doubt about it. You are in the right place because this show is all about expanding your leadership and team impact through proven tools and strategies that work well for you, that service-based small business owner. You don't have an in-house training and development department, venture capital, or a pool table in the cafeteria. And many of you likely have a remote team. But one thing is clear, you're wanting to improve how you lead your team. So welcome. I'm your host, Shelley Warren, coming to you from behind the mic in Canada, where I share proven practical tools and coaching designed to save you time, boost your confidence, and improve your effectiveness to lead. Let's get into it. Okay, you fired someone. Now what? Well, there's not a lot of hands-on leaders out there who haven't had some sort of bad firing experience. Now, notice that I said hands-on, meaning that people in corporate often are shielded from these experiences by someone in HR doing it for them. But you are a small business owner and very likely have worked closely with this person, so it was you that had to do it. Albeit, I recommend that you have an HR resource on call who's familiar with your local, state, provincial, and territory guidelines for terminating a person. Always make sure that you're following those guidelines. Now, it's a fact, losing your job is ranked right up there in the most stressful experiences anyone can have. It also is ranked right up there among the most stressful experiences business owners can have too. That and public speaking or social media takedowns. It's just stressful. It's emotional. You'll lose sleep over it and it affects other people on your team, not to mention your clients. Many of you have had some significantly uncomfortable experiences with hiring someone who you thought was a perfect fit, only to find out that they duped you. Sometimes they've turned into those team members who literally become so disruptive and unhappy in their work that their attitude causes a ripple effect right across the business. You may have even lost clients because of them. And then when you did fire them, they became enraged and the situation spilled over into your local community or social media. But I'm here to remind you that for both you and the person who just lost their job, it's all about the recovery. Let's look at what happened in these key phases of your team building strategy and then make some adjustments for the better. Let's start at the beginning. You hired someone. You may have been crunched for time to find someone. You may have used a job posting that didn't repel mediocre candidates and attract high quality ones. You may have hired someone on the spot without circling back with those all important reference checks. You may have succumbed to pressure from another team member and hired a relative. Or did you hire someone who didn't feel like a really good fit, but you thought it might work out? They might just do okay, but then they didn't. So there's the first critical step in the process of stacking your team that went wrong. You hired quickly because you felt rushed. Now, reflecting back on it, you may be ready now to admit that you recognized some red flags, but you pushed past it. You ignored your intuition. This happens a lot in small business, and it's also what makes it so emotional for the business owner because they blame themselves. maybe even feeling somewhat shameful about putting the person and their extended team through some unfortunate rough times because they made a wrong hiring decision. Okay, you've learned from it. You don't want to do that again, so what can you do differently? First step, take advantage of the paid trial or the paid project. Both of these strategies, which by the way, you can have more than one person in the process at the same time, will give both you and your candidates a chance to try on what it would be like doing the role. You'll pay them the wages that you stated in the job posting, and you'll build in touch points to check on their performance and progress, including opportunities for them to ask you questions and get feedback. The more data that you collect with real examples of their work, the easier it will be to decide to offer them a long-term role with you. It's also going to be easier for them to picture themselves working alongside you for a while. Second, hashtag always be hiring. Now, you've heard me mention this about 1,000,000 times on this podcast, and my clients certainly hear me reinforce it. The importance of collecting quality candidates and conducting reference checks and initial interviews all year round. This strategy creates a pool of candidates to pull from when you're feeling pressured to find someone fast. And thirdly, why not redeploy the work or some portion of the work to others on your team as a temporary strategy to ease that feeling of being rushed instead of having the workload pile up? It's these situations that can be less overwhelming when you have a cross-training strategy for your team. Another strategy for boosting your confidence that you can release someone from your team, as too many business owners keep people longer than they really want to, even when they're frustrated by performance outages because they don't have anyone else trained to do the work or even part of it. Cross-training for the win. Now, feeling rushed to hire is not a state of mind that I want any of you to have to deal with. So many bad decisions are made when we hurry. So I hope that you visited our new website and downloaded our guide. It's 15 pages of practical strategies for small business owners to position themselves really well as your candidate's next best hiring opportunity. It's going to make a world of difference for you when you adopt these hiring strategies. And by the way, your team can execute these on behalf of the business. It does not have to be you. In the guide, I encourage you to get the team involved big time. You can click the link that's in the episode description or head on over to stackingyourteam.com/resources and grab yours. Okay, so you've made a job offer. Let's revisit what happened there. Did you have an onboarding plan for them with a trainer and touch points where someone checked in with them, supported them? And did you provide process documentation so that they could use SOPs and checklists and begin to work through their tasks with more self-sufficiency? Was there clear expectations set up during the first week, the first month? And did someone share those unsaid expectations? You know, the ones that aren't written down anywhere, but they're still a big part of your workplace norms, like potluck lunches are on the first Friday of the month, or, no cell phone usage during team meetings. And who was checking in on the trainer to see if this new person was grasping the key parts of their role and demonstrating everything as expected? How was feedback being shared? Was it through Slack? Or was it face-to-face in real time? Or was it stockpiled and then tossed over to the team member in one fell swoop? Now, you've heard me mention to you before that not everyone is a great trainer. It doesn't mean that they don't have a wealth of knowledge about a key aspect of your business. They just aren't so great at teaching it to others. So there's the second critical step in the process of stacking your team. Your onboarding process was mediocre, leading to a lot of misalignment and missed expectations. Okay, you've learned from it, and you don't want to do that again. So what can you do differently? You'll create an onboarding process and get your team involved so that it becomes a true business asset that will serve you well for years to come. A new client that I'm working with specifically asked me to help her end what she describes as a loosey-goosey onboarding process that's worked okay until now, but she knows that things are falling through the cracks. And guess who steps in to pick up the drop pieces? She does. So she's going to be asking her current team members what they believe are the priority improvements for their onboarding process, and you should too. Now, don't take it personally. This is a chance for real improvements that will pay off for everyone. This might also include a new focus in engagement with your new hires and also a fresh approach to how you interact and provide feedback to people who've been with you for a while. It's not uncommon for people to be discounted, forgotten, until it's incredibly obvious that they're floundering. And then it's even more difficult to re-engage them with additional coaching and training. It's all so unnecessary. And it's not just a remote team problem either. Okay, let's talk about firing the person who's been with you a while by starting with the work itself. Sometimes leaders get so excited about having a bunch of things taken care of that they pile on and then pile on some more into one role that really should be two. I get it. You're trying to save money. But how many people on your team are walking burnouts, just putting one foot in front of the other, trying to make it happen and living on the edge of a breakdown? Or was this person hired for another role and then the role grew, shifted, and the expectations changed without much clear linkage or connection to their original core skills that you originally hired them for? Was there such a disconnect between the person and the work, and it was never really going to be great because the person said that they accepted the job with the attitude that it was a temporary stopover job for them until they could get something better. So their commitment to the role was short-lived from the onset. And another key point to reflect on in regards to the work itself and why the person was underperforming is this. Were you expecting too much from this person in terms of hours of work, workload, requests for rework and do-overs because you changed your mind? And then there were frequent mixed messages about priorities. And did you or the team cross personal boundaries? And were there poor communication? Maybe on both your parts, whereby it was uncomfortable to speak frankly with one another. So there's the third critical step in the process of stacking your team. There was no alignment between what skills and attributes the role required and the person who was going to be doing it. Okay, you've learned from it. You don't want to do that again. So what can you do differently? Misalignment, or what I like to call best fit, can be better uncovered through ongoing one-to-ones and those 30, 60, 90-day evaluations, rather than relying on the annual performance review. Because by that time, it's too late and too much has been impacted, likely beyond repair, which will lead to you firing them. A key component of your role as a leader, or the role of a team leader who's responsible for others, is to notice and then react to the changing needs of the role. After all, businesses shift, client demands shift, and sometimes the role itself needs to change in order to meet those new expectations. But if we don't update the expectations and we don't revise the 5-hour work plan to be a truthful reflection of the role, it can impact a team member's performance because it's now unclear about what their priorities are and what step changes and key deliverables are now required. When there's been a failure to create clear alignment between the person and the intended outcomes of any given role, we fail the team member. Now, I'm not discounting the fact that team members need to voice their concerns too by coming forward with suggestions and questions as to how best to move into and deliver these new expectations. It's a collaboration for sure. It's also common to suddenly notice that the role is simply beyond the capabilities of the person. And that's okay, because you need to know this sooner rather than later. It's also important to recognize that people who underperform often do so because they know it's all too much for them. Their role has become stressful, and now they're not enjoying it, and it's reflected in their output and their attitude. Usually, they will self-select out. But if they're quietly quitting while looking for a new career opportunity, it's up to you to see the gaps, offer coaching, and encourage them to turn their performance around. They may re-engage with your guidance, and they may accelerate their exit because you're treating them so well, even though they're considering moving out the door on their own. Now, sometimes it's warranted to fire someone swiftly. If there's been a breach of trust, abuse of their position, or they broke a core expectation, such as fraud, stealing cash or product, misrepresenting data, sharing confidential information, breaking client confidentiality, or mistreatment of a team member, or even breaking social media expectations, any of your zero tolerance policies, you will shift quickly into releasing the person from your team. Even though this kind of termination can trigger a lot of emotions like anxiety, disappointment, even shock, you will still need to treat the person with dignity and respect. Your reputation is at stake, and although this person has broken core values and expectations, how they are released from your company matters. With any of these situations, you'll want to reach out to your local employment lawyer, HR representative, and get the pertinent guidance you need to follow through on these types of terminations for your state, your province, or your territory. So whether you fired someone because of a breach of trust, or if they were not a fit because you hired them too quickly because you felt rushed, or whether you overlooked some red flags or even missed some red flags during your onboarding process because it was mediocre, or whether the person was with you for a while and the role expectations shifted and created a misalignment between what was required in the role and what they had to bring, it's over now. You fired them, or what I like to say, you've blessed and released them out into the world of work to find their next best career opportunity. And now it's all about the recovery for you, the team, and your clients. First step, protect the existing team member with strict confidentiality. We don't want peers being privy to details of the reason for the termination, how it all went down, nor how they reacted to the news. Next step, be brief with your communication to the team and your clients who were affected by this exiting team member. Just the facts. The individual is no longer employed with you, and you wish them well in their future endeavors, and you appreciate the contribution to the business that they had. You'll share the plan to the team that outlines what the next steps are for redeploying the work temporarily and what the hiring plan is for their replacement. For your clients who are directly engaged with this person, you want to ensure them that you have a plan to continue to provide services via a different team member, and then share why that person is a great fit for them and reinforce that their services won't be disrupted. Next step, document and file the action plans that led up to the decision. The same with the actual meeting where you informed the team member that their employment with you was ending. Include any documentation that was provided to you from your HR resource or your employment lawyer, and then the particular documentation required to provide to the team member. Next up, you're going to follow through on all the promises that you made to the team member in terms of their final compensation, return of their personal property, and any forms necessary for their employment records. And then lastly, you want to acknowledge your team leaders who have been working through this action plan with this individual and give them some time to debrief, wind down, and capture what they personally are committed to do differently next time. You too, after all, these are learning experiences for all of you. Add an item to your next leadership team meeting to talk about what you each experienced, and then pull together a project plan to make the improvements that you've agreed to that's going to lead to a very different outcome for anyone on your team who may be underperforming. You know, leadership can be exciting, challenging, and lonely at times, so don't go it alone. Let me help you create the team and the leadership structure that you've been craving. So until next time, remember, if you have a dream, you need a team. So let's get stacking yours today.